Adam and Adderley head to North Yorkshire to uncover the work of two celebrated designers born centuries apart. It's nice to go and visit a garden that is quite unlike your own, that is big and dramatic and grand and full of history as well as modern inspiration, which is exactly what Adam and Adderley did when they went to Scampston Hall, near Malton, in Yorkshire.
Scampston Hall in North Yorkshire is packed with history, famous designers and some lovely planting. It's got a massive 4.5 acre walled garden that's been redesigned by Pete Ordoff into a series of distinctive and artful rooms.
And the parkland around the house was designed by the masterful Lancelot Capability Brown. With his exquisite eye for lakes, views and very beautiful bridges.
The estate and the house have been handed down the same family line for over 300 years. So there's been lots of stories and quite a few challenges to keep evolving this garden to modern times.
We're here to look at the tales and the triumphs.
I'll be rolling up my sleeves. This could go horribly wrong.
And discovering ancient rooms. That is just downright dangerous.
As we get let loose on this glorious historic estate.
Scampston Hall was built in the 1690s by William St Quintin III. He was an MP for 11 terms of office and, as was common at that time, guaranteed his post by paying the local voters. Over the years, it cost him nigh on £11,000. That's over £1 million in today's money.
Wow, I wonder what it would have meant to be an MP back then.
Lots of goodies, I expect. Subsequent generations have been much more productive with their money. The walled garden was an early addition next to the house and grew the usual cut flowers and veg, while the conservatory would have had exotics and fresh fruit.
It's been recently restored, but there are some untouched treasures tucked away in the gardener's yard. If I'm really honest, as a gardener, I would be happier here in the engine room than anywhere else in the garden. Back in the day, this would have been buzzing with people. So there's 4 gardeners here today. How many roughly would there have been then?
Oh, at least 20. Wow. Easily. At least 20, because you needed somebody to do every single little job. Yeah. So you'd have your little pot boys, your boys watering the pots, and you might become a specialist in a glass house, gaining all this sort of knowledge as you went along with the sole purpose of being a head gardener.
And I know some of this has not been done up, but these presumably look, you know, like hotbeds.
I think these are melon pits.
Yeah.
And what they would do is that put tanner's bark, which would create that heat as it was fermenting, and then you put soil on top, and you could always use them to grow pineapples as well.
Yeah. What's lovely is we're still doing that today. So my version, modern day, 4 pallets on their sides, tied together, horse manure or something that's going to create that heat, soil on top, early crops, late crops.
Bob's your uncle.
Exactly, exactly. But yeah, for me, this would have definitely been a happy place.
Scampston has worked hard to preserve and respect its history. This glass house is next to be renovated, and there are lovely details here, like this bell at the walled garden gate, which summoned the gardeners when visitors arrived.
Then, When designer Pete Orloff arrived, just over 20 years ago, he honoured that history. So this, original dipping pond, and by all accounts, it's about 9 foot deep.
Really?
Yeah, so it would have been spring fed, and presumably they would have used this to water everything out the back there, wouldn't they?
The whole garden. You need a lot of water because they'd have had watering cans coming in and dipping it in the dipping pond and running around and watering 4.5 acres. You know, it's a lot of water, isn't it?
It's crackers as well, though, isn't it? But what I love as well is the fact that he's kept that and must have designed the rest of the garden off it. So it's got a lovely sort of sight line through, and you start to build the rest of these rooms. And for me, this place, I've seen so many pictures over the years, because this is quite a famous garden, you know, in the design world. You know, so just to get under the skin of it, I think would be really good.
Talking of water, I've heard that there's a plunge pool, a ladies' plunge pool over there. It's one of Capability Brown's, and they're quite unusual because he's normally garden designer, engineer, but every now and again he dabbled in architecture. And it's a small space where the ladies could just go in there and get their, you know, little knees wet, and I can't wait.
Yeah, you can see that you've got that look in your eye. You can't wait, can you? Come on. Yeah.
We will discover whether Adderley takes the plunge or not, because we're going back to Scampston later in the programme. There is a lot more to see, believe you me. It's time to go back to Scampston, where Adderley is exploring its 18th century history.
When Capability Brown took on an estate like Scampston Hall, he didn't just tackle the garden, he redesigned the entire parkland around the house. In the 1700s, it was all the rage to look out onto a designed landscape with big lakes and avenues of trees. Brown came to Scampston in 1773, and he was paid the grand sum of £100 to do his stuff. There's 80 acres of parkland, which was flat, so he planted copses and contoured the land to make new lakes and new bridges. Scampston got a very, very special one. Isn't this wonderful? This is the Palladian Bridge with pillars that nod to classical architecture. It's an immensely elaborate and beautiful way to cross the water. Brown's Lake was originally a stream, so while the view is wide and lovely at the front, it's much less majestic round the back. As a result, garden historians have a special name for it. It's known as a sham bridge, which seems a bit harsh for something so gorgeous, especially as this one comes with extras. Tucked in the stream, there's a tiny dam with a little cascade, and at the back of the bridge, he built an extra room with a half-moon window, all rather mysterious. I've got the key, and it's really exciting. That is just downright dangerous. This is absolutely incredible. There's no floor, no steps. It looks very, very deep, and the water comes from the lake in front of the Palladian Bridge. It's absolutely amazing. While men could swim in the lake, it was unseemly for women, so this is a plunge pool. It would have had steps, painted walls, and probably some pretty drapes overhead. So they would have just done this, wafted gently, because it's a really small space. But here, small is special. You don't see these very often. In fact, this is the first one that I've ever seen as a garden historian, which is why it's so exciting. Out front, Brown's beautiful lake bends around a corner, luring visitors to explore. And it's worth it for the spectacular new view of the bridge. Isn't that lovely with its reflection? And the next feature, you can almost hear it before you see it. It's another classic Brown technique, tantalising visitors by the sound of water. It's made by the big cascade he built at Scampston. This dam's yet another lake and was remodelled in the 1960s when the original stonework collapsed. The water rushed down at such a rate it flooded some houses on the estate. So the cascade was rebuilt using concrete to make it stronger. Some of Brown's stone is still visible just under the water. And the lake above is huge. To make it, he recontoured the land completely, but that wouldn't have fazed him. It was common practice to divert entire roads round your design, just like this one, and then put in a cleverly angled bridge. It meant that passing carriages caught a tantalising glimpse of the house. Moving tons of earth and the odd road is exactly why Lancelot Brown was given his middle name. When Brown visited houses, he rode around surveying the landscape, spotting what he called capabilities in different areas. So he would say, well, that has capabilities, that has capabilities. And so the nickname stuck. He was no fool, and if a lovely feature was nearby, he incorporated it, like the elaborate field shelter, or this ice house, which was packed with ice and straw to keep food cold. Both would have helped stretch the budget, as his £100 fee is about £8,000 in today's money, not much for a whole parkland. Brown was a master of illusion, creating beautiful landscapes that have impressed visitors for almost 300 years. But maybe he hadn't banked on a nosy Adam Frost.
This is rather lovely, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
And interesting, I came up here, and as sad as I am, I love stonework and brickwork. I started doing that and thought, that doesn't feel quite right, and then it definitely doesn't sound right. They're hollow.
Interesting you should say that. When the owners were having these pillars restored, they discovered they were made of wood, because obviously it was cheaper than stone.
Wow. So, I mean, in a way, so much of it was about show.
Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah.
Showmanship.
But what I really want to know, I want to know if you went in the plunge pool. Did you?
No, I didn't, because it would have been really cold. It's very deep, and I haven't brought my swimming costume with me.
I'm slightly disappointed. I thought that excitement, you would have bound to have gone in the pool. but there you go.
I think Anthony was wise not to take the plunge. I don't think I would have been overly keen either. We will be going back to Scampston when Adam will be sharing the beauties of its modern present garden. Now it's time to go back to Scampston and visit their wall garden, which of course was originally a vegetable garden, producing fruit and vegetables for the big house. But 20 years ago was redesigned completely by the great Dutch designer Piet Oudolf.
In 1999, Scampston Hall brought in designer Piet Oudolf to redesign their 4.5-acre walled garden. Starting from scratch, he embarked on a massive planting project, creating a series of superb garden rooms. Some packed with flowers, others with form and structure. Over 20 years later, it's really marched on. But as with creating any garden, nothing ever goes quite as planned. And managing something on this scale is a mammoth task. But we've got a head gardener that's up to the job. Andy Karovich came here in 2020 with the aim to bring the garden back to its true Oudolf roots. What's it been like coming into this, which to me already looks like a gorgeous garden?
Yeah, it's exciting. And walking in, beautiful colours everywhere. But it just felt the colours were going and the design was almost slipping. It wasn't particularly Piet Oudolf anymore because his style's so kind of distinctive. So putting the design back where it was, putting plants back that have basically been outcompeted, and then take it from there.
And he's known as the Grim Reaper, as he's taken out tangled perennial beds completely, dividing the plants and recreating the original layout. And it's not just the herbaceous plants.
The formality of the garden was just, it wasn't sharp. He used his formal structure against the softer plantings to accentuate the softness as well as the hardness of the hedges. So it's been a lot of hedge cutting, not just with a hedge cutter but with chainsaws, to actually get to the height that is needed.
These katsura trees are next. They'll be coppice, so they are more balanced with the rest of the garden. But in the spring garden, the cubes of pin-sharp box are being managed for blight and left to grow. And sort of shape-wise here, because you've got these sort of, well, they're not...
The fluffy bits in the
middle.
middle.
The fluffy, that's...
The fluffy
yeah,
bits
that's,
in the middle.
Yeah.
Right, so the idea of the fluffy bits is meant to be a dome. A clever blacksmith is going to make us a lovely kind of dome made out of copper, so it sits nicely in the box so it doesn't sink. And then we can just use hedge cutters, sheep shears to be able to cut around it.
I think he'd be really chuffed that you're taking it back to that detail.
Yeah, I think it's important. And these domes actually mirror with the dome of the house, which is slightly hidden behind the trees this time of year.
Andy found the dome detail on the original plans. And also discovered bowl-shaped cutouts on the yew hedges at either end. He's made a start already. So all you've got to do now is cut that out there.
Do you know what I thought? As you're with us, as a guest, I think it's your honour to cut it for us.
No, what you were going to say, I think it might be quite funny.
I was going to go, I think it might be quite funny.
You could actually hear you say it.
Yeah.
So, and also if it goes horribly wrong, you know, you don't get sacked.
Yeah, exactly, that's the plan.
And what's great about you is it's really forgiving.
Yeah, exactly.
Back.
Yeah, if we get this really wrong, it's like a bad haircut, isn't it?
Yeah, it will grow back. Let's see if it works, mate.
Yeah, this is the moment of truth.
Yeah, it works, pal. It really does, that shape. As you get those domes right, that will bounce all the way
Yeah.
down through there to the house.
Amazing.
Brilliant. The rest of the garden is work in progress, but a very beautiful one. This garden is a series of rooms, and you can feel straight away when you walk in that they're all going to carry just very slightly different atmospheres. And here, this is called the Millennia Waves Garden. Well, it does what it says on the tin. You've got these waves of millennia going up right across the site. And you can see people are going to walk in and think, actually, it's just a load of grasses. But in reality, it's not. And I think it draws you down and in. I love that simplicity, but also the big, bold blocks. And they work really well against the horizontal of the lawn. Just next door is another garden and another incredible atmosphere. Wow, this feels completely different. There's an eeriness about it. I've even got that slight shivery thing going on. But moving from one space to the other, there's a calmness in here, which is incredible. Straight away you're drawn to this central pool. And then you look, it's an ever-changing picture. The sky is just reflective. There's a dark cloud there at the moment, and it's really moody. It's called the Silent Garden, and you can see why. You look closely and you've got these big columns of taxus that don't really move through the space because they're quite static, but they're big and they're very, very bold. So, how could you distill this calm at home? Well, I think it's in front of me. It's amazing, that scene that's going on, but it doesn't have to be that big. It could just be a container this big outside the back door, cup of coffee, wonderful light and cloud in the sky, and you got yourself a changing piece of art. This is a fabulous garden, being returned almost to living history. As one of Pete's earliest designs, his last section is masterful. A modern mound created from spoil, and also a nod to the past. This has been incredible because even though, in reality, compared to what you've been walking around, this is a landscape that's only 20 years old. Yeah. But it sits really comfortably. And this, as a finishing spot, just to come and have a look, it's wonderful, isn't it?
It's fabulous because he's created this wonderful Elizabethan feature. They used to use it as a viewing mount, so they could look out over the garden and they could look over the walls and the hedges to the wider landscape.
See, to me, that's the clever bit, because obviously you wall something in, you enclose it, but you give yourself that opportunity still to connect with what's going on outside.
To look over. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's lovely. The way that the authors thought about this, there's so many details through this garden that connect this place to the past, you know.
Yeah.
But it still feels modern, and I love it.
Totally agree. Yeah.
To combine a really important historical garden with a wonderful modern one is inspirational. And I think anybody who possibly can should go and see it.